Hello guys, and welcome back to another cold episode. On today's episode, as you could probably tell by the title and the thumbnail, we are going to be talking about Fiendsmith, and more specifically, the fact that we are getting Fiendsmith and Azamina in the new selection pack for the anniversary. We're also getting Millennium, which is great and fantastic, and we're going to talk about pretty much all of those here today. So we can see here, these are the URs that we have. Engraver, as well as some of the Azaminas. We have Azamina, we have the new White Forest LZ, as well as we have the other Snake Eye as well, which basically all of these are just Azamina stuff. And I'm just going to quickly go over what generally takes place with all of these decks, including the Millennium, and just kind of show you what these are. And then also I do want to quickly talk about the fact that Engraver is going to be semi-limited. I did kind of expect this, but it's still disappointing. And yeah, would have rather have seen Beatrice be banned. I don't know why they didn't decide to do that, but alas, here we are. So yeah, let's hop into the... Oh, last thing to talk about real quick. Hero's also getting a structure deck, so there you go. Let's hop into the explanations of Fiendsmith and the like. Alright, so here we are with Millennium. We're going to start with Millennium because it's the simplest. If you don't know what Millennium is, it's basically the new Exodia deck, and it's actually pretty interesting. The win condition is actually not to assemble Exodia, which is different from what most Exodia decks do, or what most Exodia support in the past has aimed to do. The win condition is actually the Unstoppable Exodia Incarnate, which is actually a very interesting monster, and I very much so enjoy it. I might be playing this deck in Master Duel. But you can see here what it does is, first of all, it requires 5 Forbidden 1 monsters. We'll explain how to get to this guy onto the field later, but what it says is you cannot be destroyed by opponent's card effects. Good effect. Once per turn, during damage calculation, it gains attack equal to your life points. Now, during the standby phase, you lose 1,000 life points, so do keep that in mind. But yeah, if it attacks or is attacked, you just boost to an insane amount, and yeah, it's very, very powerful in that regard as well. However, it is an effect, so it can be like Apoed or Baroned or something along those lines, which does matter for Master Duel. On top of that, once per turn, when a spell, trap card, or effect is activated, you could just negate the effect. Notably, none of these are hard once per turns, which means if you get multiple of this guy out, which I believe you can pretty easily, you could just have multiple spell trap negates, which is fantastic. And then on top of that, during the end phase, this is probably its best effect, which sounds strange given the fact that it's like got, you know, 2 other... Yeah, anyway, this is its best effect. During the end phase, you can set an Exhaust or Obliterate spell trap from your deck, which is really, really powerful because of this card right here, Exhaust Fires of Rage, which if you don't... Yeah, let's just go over this. If you control a level 10 or higher Exodia monster, destroy all cards your opponent controls. However, it has a secondary effect where you can banish it from the grave except the turn it was sent there in order to either add a Forbidden 1 monster from deck or grave to your hand. Not exactly great, but it's something. Or you can shuffle up to 5 Forbidden 1 monsters from your grave and or banishment into the deck. Now, what this allows you to do is reset your monsters so that Ankh and the rest of the cards basically work. So that's generally why it's so good. Hey, your right arm of the Forbidden 1 got banished due to your shifter. Well, not really that big of a deal. This card just banishes itself from the grave in order to recycle that, and now you're off to the races once again. Very, very useful. We also have Obliterate Blaze, which is just a way to OTK more effectively. You basically equip a whole bunch of... you equip your Exodia pieces to your Exodia Incarnate, and then it gains 10,000 attack and inflicts piercing. Very, very strong. That's pretty much it for the boss monster and why it's so useful. However, the rest of the deck is centered around specifically this card, which is basically the fusion spell, quote unquote. It is technically a special summon, which means you're not properly summoning the fusion monster, which means you can't like reborn it. So keep that in mind. But yeah, it's very, very powerful. You just show 5 Exodia Forbidden 1, or sorry, 5 Forbidden 1 monster cards from your hand, deck, and or face-up field, which is important. And then you can summon the Exodia and shuffle back the face-up monsters you control into the deck except for Exodia monster cards. Meaning... or Millennium cards, which means you can shuffle back your Forbidden 1 cards as well. All of these guys. I think this one wouldn't count, so if you ended up having this guy on your field, you revealed all 5, this guy would stick around, which is kind of funny. But beside the point, on top of that, you are locked out of summoning for the rest of the turn, so do keep that in mind. And then, yeah, instead of going to the grave, it goes back into the deck as well, which is something of note, which means you basically always have access to this. We're still playing 3 because it's incredibly powerful, so there you go. The rest of the cards basically center around getting that out or synergizing with it. We have Heart of the Blue Eyes, which searches the Ankh by discarding itself, as well as it does some other things which are kind of important, but not really that big of a deal. This card was actually released, I believe... No, this one wasn't released early. I was thinking of the other Blue Eyes, no, I have no idea what I was thinking of. Then we have Sengenjin, Wakes from a Millennium, which says cannot be destroyed by monster effects, and then you can only use each of the following effects once per turn, and all of them basically have this effect, except for Heart, I believe. I believe Heart's the only one that doesn't have this effect, this upcoming effect, which is kind of interesting. But this one says, if this card is in your hand, you can place it in the spell and trap card zone, and then you can reveal either an Ankh or pay 2,000 to special summon it, and then do a thing. This one searches a Millennium monster. We have Golem, which... adds a temple from your deck to your hand and allows you to protect your Millennium Ankh from activation negation specifically. So something like Ash Blossom, or more specifically Sprite Red, which negates effects, would still be able to negate the Ankh, but specifically Baron would not be able to negate. Make sense? Or like Judgment, right? So there you go. Similar in nature to like Alistair the Invoker's field spell or Branded Lost, right? Think of that. Then we have Shield of the Millennium Destiny, which allows you to do the same thing, except for add the Millennium Ankh from your deck to your hand. Now, Wedju Temple basically just allows you to put one of those guys into the field, or onto the field, into the spell and trap card zone from deck, which is very nice as long as you have a monster in your hand. And then also, it protects your monsters, similar in nature to like the Crystal Beast stuff. So it just like makes them a Crystal Beast. It's okay, but not insane. Let me show you the combo and more or less what it does, and then we'll go from there. All right, so here we are. And we started off with both Ankh and the Shengenji, which is pretty good. So we're just going to reveal the Ankh in our hand in order to special summon this guy and then to search out as well. So we're going to search out, I guess the best one here would probably be Shield. So yeah, we're going to go for the Shield here. We're going to activate the Shield. I actually lied to you. It was the other guy, but it's fine. We already had the Ankh. I should have gone for the Temple Searcher. My bad. Anyway, this adds the Millennium Ankh, which is pretty nice. And then we are going to activate the Ankh as well, revealing all 5 of these guys in our hand and or deck. And then, yep. And then out comes this guy. And this is pretty much it, right? There's not really a whole lot more to do with this deck. That's more or less it. What I could have done as well, which I didn't do, is I could have gone into Silhouette Rabbit in order to then set the Azure Rune, or not the Azure, yeah, the Azure Rune with these two, and then just like have that as an addition. So I could have done that. That would have been nice. But now we can go for the Exodia Incarnate and set the Exotic Rage, Fires of Rage. We also have Blaze, which is something of note. But yeah, that's pretty much it. There's not really a whole lot more. We can see here the opponent's going to do a thing. And then during damage calc, we're going to be able to boost to 8,000. They're going to crash. Bada bing, bada boom. Yeah, that's pretty much it. We can also go like this and be like, I'm going to explode your back row. Smile. Yeah, and then we also can set another one during the end phase. So you just reset that. So yeah, there you go. During the standby phase, we're going to burn for a bit, but now we can just go combat, and yeah, that's pretty much it. It's very simple, it's very basic, but that's honestly what makes it so interesting, is that it is such a simple concept, and a lot of it comes to just like understanding what is important and what needs to resolve and all of that stuff. But yeah, it's a very simple idea, and it works very well. All right, now let's talk about Fiendsmith. I know everyone is clamoring to know what Fiendsmith does and what it is. So real quick, Fiendsmith is an archetype that centers around specifically light fiends, more specifically Engraver in particular, but let's quickly discuss what this deck does. Basically, Engraver says discard it to add a Fiendsmith spell trap, which generally you're going to only be adding this guy, which is Tracked, which says add a light fiend in order to, add a light fiend, then discard a card, and then you can banish it to do a thing. But most importantly, it's add a Light Fiend, discard a card, which is specifically useful with Luri, which happens to be a Light Fiend that, when discarded, special summons itself, which is very important and very useful. This is kind of a brick, but it's only a pseudo brick because you can normal summon it and still do the full Fiendsmith combo. Now, what is the full Fiendsmith combo? Well, basically any Light Fiend, which this also happens to be a Light Fiend, any Light Fiend can go into Requiem, which says one Light Fiend. That's it. You can only special summon Fiendsmith Requiem once per turn. Keep that in mind. It's a special summon effect that is only once per turn. However, the secondary effect, where you contribute this card in order to special summon a Fiendsmith monster from hand or deck, which is a quick effect during the main phase, is not a once per turn. So keep that in mind as well, because it has a second effect as well to put itself onto the field. Right? So there you go. During the main phase, you contribute this card to special summon a Fiendsmith monster from hand or deck. Most of the time, you're going to be special summoning not Engraver, but actually Lacrima, the Crimson Tears, which we'll get into in a second. And there is a chance, we do not know if we're actually getting Lacrima. We do not know if we're getting any cards other than Engraver, which I would be very surprised if we don't get the full suite of cards. But there is a chance this technically came in the second wave of support. So there is a chance that Lacrima doesn't actually show up in this next set. So if that's not the case, you're just going to summon Engraver and go from there. However, beside the point, going back to this card, it just special summons the Engraver from deck or the Lacrima. Lacrima would then send Engraver, and Engraver can special summon itself back. We'll talk about that in a second. But you can then target a light non-link fiend monster you control, equip it with this card from your field or grave, and then it gains 600 attack. Pretty cool, right? Now, all in all, that's pretty solid, but it's not insane. Where it really becomes insane is what Engraver does, which says, if this card is in your grave, you can shuffle one other Light Fiend monster in your grave from your grave into the deck or extra deck to special summon this card. Which means if you go if you go Requiem, link it off, or sorry, not link it off, tribute it off for Engraver. Engraver can then be used to do other things, use as link material, use it as an XZ, etc., etc. If it goes to the graveyard, you can then shuffle back that link one in order to special summon this guy back. Or if you send it to the graveyard, like for example with Lacrima, which says if this card is a normal special summon, you can send a Fiendsmith card from your deck to the grave. You can send the Engraver. You can then send back the Requiem in order to special summon the Engraver, which is pretty solid. On top of that, during the opponent's turn, if this card is in your graveyard, you can target a Fiendsmith Link monster in your grave to shuffle this card into the deck and then special summon that monster. So that is how you get the Requiem on the opponent's turn, which is really, really powerful. This is what makes Lacrima so impactful. The fact that you can go Requiem, do the full combo with the Requiem starter, and then put it back thanks to Lacrima being in grave alongside it, special summoning it back out, and then doing this during the opponent's turn as well. So you basically get to do however many of those effects you want per turn. Very, very useful. Yeah, this reminder, the only effect that is not a once per turn is the effect to tribute itself to special summon a guy. So for example, if you special summon the Requiem during your opponent's turn, don't use the Requiem, but just have it on field, and then during your turn decide to tribute to special, you can then bring back the Requiem or resummon it and then use it again. That's just a little tip. I don't know why I'm getting so in the weeds about that, but there you go. That's what Fiendsmith does. Now, what are you ultimately doing? What did I just get rid of? What are you ultimately doing? You can go into Sequence. Sequence requires 2 monsters, including a Light Fiend, and then during the main phase, you fusion summon by shuffling the materials from grave into the deck, and most of the time what you are going to be summoning here is the Desiree. Now, there is another Fiendsmith monster, which we must make note of, which is Lacrima. Lacrima is currently banned in the TCG because of time rules, but basically what it does is it requires 2 Light Fiends, and it's a level 6 Fiend, which is pretty important, because this allows you to go into a myriad of things like Beatrice or the DD Wave King Caesar, right? That's mostly what it's used for. However, on summon, you can also target one of your Light Fiend monsters that is banished or in grave, add it to the hand or special summon it, and then if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle one other Light Fiend into the deck from grave into the deck or extra deck to inflict 1200. So there you go. That's more or less what it does, and yeah, it's pretty solid. Just being able to like reborn a guy. It reborns the Engraver, so that's pretty good. This is likely what we're going to get instead of what we have in the TCG, which is Necroquip Princess, which says a monster equipped with a monster card and a fiend monster card, which, due to the way that this card is worded, because you can special summon it with the second effect by sending the above cards from hand or field to the grave, you basically get a free way to special summon this guy. You just like equip with the Requiem's effect to a monster, and then just like tribute off, and here's Necroquip. Now, what does this card do? It is a level 6 fiend, and it puts Engraver in grave, and then Engraver just special summons itself, so you can make a rank 6. That's it. That's pretty much all it does. It also draws cards and does a few other things, but for the most part, it is a level 6 that is extremely easy to summon, and then on top of that, has the ability to go into a rank 6. Useful. Now, I mentioned Desiree earlier. Desiree requires Fiendsmith Engraver and 2 light fiend monsters. Now, that's not that hard, due to the fact that through the basic combo, Sequins fulfills the requirements, as well as utilizes Engraver and things like Lacrima and Desiree and stuff like that in order to go, or not Desiree, Requiem, in order to go into Desiree. So it's very simple to make this guy. What he does is negate the effects of face-up monsters onto the field up to the number of link ratings equipped to this card. All of the Fiendsmith link monsters, specifically Sequins, Agnum Day, Requiem, etc., have a way to equip themselves to a monster. Some of them at quick effect speed, some of them not. This one has the same effect, right? So basically, it's just Hot Red Dragon Archfiend, but like better. On top of that, the other Link monsters give this guy attack, which makes him very powerful and incredibly strong. So there you go. That's pretty much it. On top of that, you can shuffle one other Light Fiend from your grave into the deck or extra deck, then target a card in the field and send it to the graveyard if this card is sent to the graveyard. Now, why is this important? Because Lacrima not only can send Engraver, it can also send Fiendsmith in Paradise, which says, if your opponent special summons a monster while this card is in your grave, you can banish this card to send a Fiendsmith monster from deck or extra deck to the grave. That's the important part. The actual effect on field doesn't matter because you're going to send it with Lacrima, and Lacrima can then send a second Desiree in order to trigger the Desiree to then send another guy on the field. So, pretty useful. It's just like another way to get additional interaction and not having to end on Desiree. So, Lacrima, very, very useful and a very solid card. If we are getting all of these cards, Lacrima is easily a 3 of and could be included as a main staple in a deck. However, if you're just using it as an engine, oftentimes you're playing 2 to 3 Engraver. I guess 2 because Engraver is limited or semi-limited, and then the 1 Lacrima as just a way to basically get into Engraver, right? Because going into something like DD Wave High King Caesar, I hate this card's name, or Beatrice, which is for some reason not banned, is way better. So all in all, that's more or less what that deck does. Next up, we have ourselves the Diabellstar stuff, or more specifically Azamina, and how it specifically works with most decks. I'm just going to show you what most decks will do with the Diabellstar in particular. So, real quick, Diabellstar special summons itself, searches, or sets a Sinful Spoil, right? What you're going to be setting is Hollowed, which reveals an Azamina fusion in the extra, and then for every 4 levels it has rounded down, you send a Sinful Spoil card from your hand or field to the grave in order to fusion summon it, special summon it, right? Then if it's in the grave, you target an Azamina card you control, or in your grave, to shuffle it into the deck, and if you do, add this card to your hand. Cool, pretty awesome. However, that's not the one you're actually grabbing. You're actually grabbing Deception, which is the continuous, which tributes a monster from hand or field in order to add the Azamina card from your deck to your hand, which then adds the fusion, which then you can use to go into this guy, which is all you need to know is if this card is fusion summoned, you can add an Azamina or a Sinful Spoil from your deck to your hand. Then if it is destroyed, you can add a Sinful Spoil from your deck to your hand. Cool. Or the other one, which is most of the time, actually, this is most of the time where you're going into. I forgot which one was which, I'm not gonna lie. This is the one, most of the time, you will be going into, because what it does is basically, you tribute it to negate an effect. It's just an Omni Negate. When your opponent activates a card or effect, tribute, negate that effect. Notably, this does also get around the Millennium protection, which we talked about earlier. So, it negates effects. That's pretty useful due to the fact that it's basically you summon Diabellstar, and then the second summon in the game, or from you, is in Omni, which is incredibly powerful. So you could just do that as well. Obviously, you can still do the original Sinful Spoil stuff and what have you, but this is just very, very useful, right? Because then you get to go and just have an Omni pretty quickly. So let me show you how the Fiendsmith stuff and the Azamina stuff works at a basic level. Okay, so here we are with Tracked. I'm actually not going to use Tracked here because I think there's a more interesting way of me being able to do this. So let me show you. We're going to start off here with normal summon Snake Eye Ash. Snake Eye Ash is going to grab a Poplar. Poplar is going to special summon itself. And we are going to go into, yeah, we're going to go from here. We're going to search out the original Sinful Spoils. And I'm basically not going to use these guys in the way that you're supposed to, because I'm going to be silly and immediately link them off into Moon, because I want to show you that the way that we actually do this, or the way that you can actually do this. So here we have Moon of the Closed Heaven, which is pretty much any two monsters into this guy. Now what this guy does is allows you to go into Requiem. Now I talked about how Requiem is basically full combo by itself. So we're going to tribute the Requiem and we're going to summon out the Lacrima. Lacrima is then going to send to the graveyard the Engraver. Engraver is then going to special summon itself by putting back the Moon of the Closed Heaven specifically in order to special summon itself. Now we can go for the Requiem and we can equip here in order to equip to this guy. We also have the Fiendsmith Engraver's effect, which says, where is it? You can target an equip card you control on a monster on the field, send them to the graveyard. Not really useful, but it's another like removal effect, which is something I didn't note previously about Engraver. Yeah, for some reason he's also removal, which is kind of crazy. So here we can either go for Necroquip, which I don't think we're getting in TCG or in Master Duel, so I'm just going to ignore that. We're going to go for Sequence here. So we're going to link these two off into Sequence, which now allows us to go and activate the Sequence effect in order to go into Desiree, shuffling back 1, 2, and 3 in order to go into the Desiree, and then we can use the effect of our Sequence in order to equip here. Now, we still have access to Tracked, which I'm going to show you real quick how this works. I don't want to chain anything. We grab up the Lurie, then Lurie is going to be pitched, and then Lurie is going to special summon itself in order to put itself onto the field, and then you can go, hey, look at that, that's Requiem. Right, obviously I can't make the Requiem here, but like, yeah, there you go, there's Requiem. So that's pretty interesting. And then there's a bunch of other things that you can do. Obviously, now I'm going to show you the Azamina stuff, and we'll go from there. Alright, so this hand's kind of silly because I ended up drawing the Hallowed Azamina as well as Diabellstar, but I'm still going to show you more or less what this card does. Out comes the Diabellstar. Diabellstar is going to set the Deception of the Sinful Spoil. We're going to activate the Deception here in order to then search out the Hallowed, and then we're going to go and activate the Hallowed, and we're going to summon out the Illa here, sending this guy. And bada bing, bada boom, there's an Omni. That's it. That's all it does. Technically speaking, you can also go into the other fusion, the Mu, Azamina Mu Rusilago, which also does additional stuff, right? Adding in Azamina card there, you know, etc., etc. So it's an additional extension, right? So I could have added the original Sinful Spoil from that position as well. So lots of stuff that we could have done from there. We're going to go like this and just tribute this guy to add this guy back to hand. Just showing you that that still works. Also, you know, being able to do stuff like that. Coolio, coolio. Now, I'm sure you were wondering what all you're expecting Fiendsmith to be played in, and the two big answers are Snake Eyes, especially with the new Azamina stuff. Snake Eyes happens to synergize extremely well with that, because again, any two monsters does a full Engraver, or Fiendsmith combo, as well as Diabellstar happens to synergize really well with the Azamina stuff, so it's very, very useful, and just kind of makes Diabellstar even better of a starter, so you can see a list like this. So that's the number one, and the number two is Ubel. Ubel also really likes the Engraver stuff, as just an additional engine, because then it cuts down on the amount of like dead cards and stuff like that the Ubel has to play, and yeah, so those are the two decks that really enjoy this this guy in particular. But yeah, that's gonna be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, I likes very much, so appreciate it, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.